Viewer discretion is advised.
One there, emergency.
It was a guy trying to come through the windows.
Okay, was he black, white, or Hispanic?
Burglary attempt just occurred, 603
The
Vernon
Deputy
Street.
Duckie Show features the proud men and women of public safety and those who support them. The stories, opinions, and experiences shared are the personal accounts of each guest and are presented as they remember them. The views expressed are solely those of the individuals speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views of any employer, agency, or organization.
Welcome to the Deputy Duckie Show. I'm Antonio. Today's guest is somebody who spent the last decade serving others. Landon served for 5 years in the Marine Corps and continued that commitment with follow-up 5 years in law enforcement that he's still progressing. Landon has been able to see leadership, discipline, and service from two different perspectives, and I'm excited to hear both of those perspectives. So welcome to the show, Landon.
Appreciate you having me.
So how was the Marine Corps? Tell me how you got started in your career of service.
Absolutely. So when I was 6 years old, I have a twin brother as well, and we pretty much both have always known since childhood that Marine Corps was where we were going to end up in our early adult life. That was never a question. Our family always knew it. And so it wasn't a surprise at 17 when we enlisted that that's what we wanted to do. So that began pretty much directly after high school and did a 5-year contract on active duty. Loved it. Loved almost every second of it. It's a different world, but it's one that'll make you into a man or a woman very, very quickly. So I'm very, very thankful for the opportunities I had to be able to serve at such a capacity with the people that I serve with. It's something I'll never forget and I'll never take for granted.
So what exactly did he do in the Marine Corps?
So I had a couple different hats that I wore. Initially, my primary job was, for layman's terms, it's an expeditionary airfield systems technician. And to sum up that entire, slew of words there, we specialized in the construction of airfields, landing pads, and ensuring that pilots were able to land safely in the event of emergencies. And honestly, it was one of the best jobs I ever had. And the secondary job to that was I was a marksmanship coach. I instructed individuals from Marines over at Parris Island and loved every single second of that. And I've taken that to the civilian world with me as well, where I've maintained just an avid love for everything marksmanship and everything that is related to the realm of firearms and proficiency in that.
It's such to the point you've even built a firing range in your backyard, didn't you?
Yeah, we
And we're not talking about sticks with targets on them. We're talking about a firing range.
Yeah, we've got pretty much the exact same thing you would see at the majority of, say, law enforcement agencies or training centers. I mean, I'm blessed to have the ability to have that literally in my backyard. It's definitely something that helps with maintaining the skill set and always improving and getting better. So it's a blessing to have that opportunity.
Absolutely. So you did your 5 years in the Marine Corps, got out. Was there a period in your life where you're like, I want to figure out what I want to do? Or where you're like, nope, law enforcement's it, I'm going straight for that?
Yeah, pretty much the second one. So before I got out, I knew, I had exhausted my 5 years on active service. And the reality was that we were not really in a conflicting time in the United States. There was no active war. The deployments were ramping down, and there just really wasn't much to do that wasn't sitting on a base, whether it be stateside or over in Japan. And that's just not where I wanted to spend the next 4 to 8 years, hoping, that we had the opportunity to go and do some further service and do some good elsewhere. So I made the decision to get out, but I knew long before then that whenever my time in the military came to an end, that law enforcement was absolutely the route. And I never questioned that for a second.
Tell me how you got started in your law enforcement career.
Sure. So City of Fayetteville Police Department, pretty much directly outside of the Marine Corps. I took what's called terminal leave, which is I have all this time saved up that I didn't take vacation time, is what it is. And during that time, I applied at the agency, and I was lucky enough that they saw that maybe I had some traits that they liked, experience that they liked. I don't know what it was. Maybe I interviewed well. But long story short, they picked me right up, and a month and a half later, I was off to the academy and, had no issues. It was during COVID time, which kind of brought some struggles, a lot of people getting sick and whatnot. And ultimately we saw it through, so it worked out. And I did approximately 2 years at the City of Fayetteville Police Department, and it was just it's a hard place to beat for a city type environment.
So why do you leave the Fayetteville Police Department? Because when people think of police officers, they think of people that spend entire careers at one agency.
Yeah, and sometimes that does happen, and there's nothing wrong with that. For me, being young, at the time that I chose to leave, I believe I was 25 years old, and it's not because the agency treated me bad. They were awesome. Had really no genuine complaints. They weren't going after people and cutting heads off of police officers, like you see nowadays. But ultimately, I just needed more jurisdiction. I was
Sandbox was too small.
Sandbox was too small. Not that I didn't have toys inside to play with, but I just needed more. And my twin brother, who was in law enforcement right after the Marine Corps as well, pretty much got in the same time I did, was at an agency that was much bigger and gave him some opportunities that I didn't quite have where I was. And that really drew me in.
What were those opportunities you were looking for?
So one thing that I'm very passionate about is being able to pursue and not be limited by certain policy or certain viewpoints of individuals that may be in charge. But furthermore was the biggest, I would say, attractive factor was really the interstate capability, because anybody who has ever worked in interstate in law enforcement or does not work one at least knows the interstate is the main pipeline for criminal activity throughout the entire.
So working in Fayetteville, you didn't have interstate jurisdiction.
No interstate. I know we had pretty much one main little highway and then a secondary smaller highway that intersected between different cities, but the jurisdiction itself was sub 15 square miles. And hearing from my twin brother, we've got 450 approximately, and we've got the interstate, and man, just the crazy things that we see take place on the interstate, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it was just one of those things where it was like, that's where I want to plant my feet. That
made sense as the next logical step in your career.
For somebody who was very proactive, it was absolutely the logical decision by far.
So you went to a larger jurisdiction. Was it everything you wanted and then some?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the way to put it. It's kind of overwhelming initially, when you're in that, because you have to go back through the field training process and get evaluated by the trainers and make sure that you are, even though your prior service in law enforcement and you might have some experience, they still have to evaluate you. So during that evaluation period, where I was obviously having to ride with another deputy, a trainer, it's kind of overwhelming at first when you come from such a small, tight-knit agency with limited jurisdiction, and now you've got just this massive amount of land that you are responsible for. It's eye-opening, it's time-consuming, but it is freedom. I think was the greatest part, is it's just freedom to really be able to do what you need to do and go where you need to go and be treated like a big boy in the process.
Your sandbox got bigger. You were able to probably affect more change than you would have in you said 15 square miles?
I like to think so. It's a different type of policing when you have some city environment and some rural environment all in one, but you are able to see so many different aspects of this job that a city themselves just can't necessarily provide. And for me, it just makes your experience go through the window, so long as you take advantage of all that extra space and time that you have to patrol just such a larger area with so many different demographics. It's overwhelming.
We're not talking about a county out in the sticks. We're talking about, this is a metro Atlanta county where you still have a balance between a good amount of population and city, but it also has a large rural area, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it was a very populated county. It was pretty well built up, probably about 70% of it. But with that obviously came, you've got the woods and you've got the open fields and you've got the driving 30 minutes to get to a call. But at that same time, you may have a day where every call is within 5 minutes You're going up and down city streets, having to go to X and Y and Z. And so it gives you a very awesome balance when you work for an agency that has, in my opinion, what I would consider as the best of both worlds for whatever a law enforcement officer wants to do. It provides it all.
So what were some of the things that you were doing at the larger agency that you maybe weren't able to do at that smaller agency that was only 15 square miles?
I would say the number one thing that comes to mind is that I would say that the caliber of calls was drastically enhanced. And I don't just mean like call volume. I think it's really the significance of certain calls that we would get. It was all the domestics that we worked were worse, right? It's what it felt like. The crimes that we were dealing with were bigger. They had more intricacies in them. And then obviously when it comes to the proactive side of it, which is what I really focused on, there was so many more individuals that I encountered, especially when it comes to the interstate where, it's one of the main interstates in the state. I mean, you're having tens of thousands of people come up and down every single day. It's in a city environment, you may do the same job every day for a week, but when you're working a busy county, it's like the job is new pretty much every single day, so long as you go out there and try and genuinely do the job and genuinely try and affect change and make a difference.
So you mentioned how at Fayetteville you got a lot of experience working thefts, burglaries, petty thefts, essentially retail crime.
Yeah.
What are some things that you learned in working those cases that may be unattractive to newer officers?
I would say that some of it gets mundane. It's a lot of the time in some city environments, you're kind of working the same calls kind of over and over again. You're working the same thefts from Walmart, the same thefts from Kohl's, the same memo. And it kind of gets to the point where I think some newer officers who get into this line of work that really want to just go after and just get it and be proactive, it can really wear them down in the event that all you're doing is repeating the same mundane stuff over with little time to go out and really do what you want to do, which is be proactive. And whether it be look for guns, dope, you name it, it can just be really kind of disheartening from time to time.
Those calls are mundane and they get repetitive, but I feel as if when you're able to actually see those cases through rather quickly versus just taking a report and sending it upstairs, I think it's a lot more gratifying. But it takes the right agency to be able to do that. You can't do that everywhere. And
Absolutely.
Part of that is you want to be able to catch the criminal that day. If the theft occurred, you want to catch them that day and handle it rather than have to send it upstairs to a lengthy investigations process for $100, $200 theft.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's a necessary evil because if you don't prosecute those smaller things, those problems grow and get worse and worse and worse. Mm-hmm. So what are some things that helped you make those cases?
I would say that it was just, even though they did become mundane at times, it was still caring, because ultimately it's like a internal kind of drive. Like, you want to quote unquote catch the bad guy, right? And you're right when you say, you want it to be done that day. Like, you'd love to just be able to show up and take everybody and handle business right on the spot. But I think that when you're unable to do that, it teaches you a lot of patience, and you kind of see another side of the job, and it almost kind of puts you in your place in a way and just says, hey, you've got to learn to slow down. You can't always get everything you want right away. And I think that as a young officer, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because we don't know as much as we think we do, especially when you're fresh out of the academy or you're even a year on the road. You don't know near as much as you think you know. And when you're forced to slow down and work repetitive calls like thefts or the same sort of domestics, you can learn a lot from it, but you're going to learn as much as you choose to learn, I think. And if you really apply yourself and you choose to do your own digging, because nobody's ever going to tell you, yeah, man, we don't want your help with this case. if you choose to do your own digging and really invest your time into it, I think that you can learn a lot more than just taking the call, completing a report, going on about your day, and just getting disheartened because you're not out there stopping cars and whatnot.
So I know you said, those theft reports can get mundane and repetitive. But I feel like here in recent times, especially, retail thefts have become a crisis, not just locally, but in the country. So what are things that law enforcement does nowadays, or steps that agencies can take to maybe reduce the number of retail thefts, other than getting there within a very short amount of time, or pretty much being there when it happens, so that they can effect an arrest as the theft takes place?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of tools that we do have available that assist in those investigations. I mean, the main one is going to be flock cameras. I understand there's a lot of controversy.
There's a lot of controversy with those flock cameras right now.
A lot. However, what I can attest just off my experience with them is that they are so much more of a asset and an investigative tool than they are an intrusive device. I'm not saying that there's not bad apples that use them, and they use them for unintended purposes. And lately we've seen a lot of them getting, the hammer getting dropped on them by agencies and by the state, because ultimately they are breaking the law when they misuse them.
There's going to be bad apples everywhere. Every profession has bad apples, and every profession has people that misuse the tools given to them. Mm-hmm. But I think where we're getting lost is Flock is a very good investigative tool, but it's also a tool that people don't understand and don't know enough about, and in turn, they're scared of it, as they should be, because I think it has a lot of potential for abuse. But I think once we realize how it actually works, people might be a little more comfortable, because at the same time, yeah, it knows where you're at. But really what it knows is that car came by that point at that time. And that's it. Flock doesn't know who's in the car. It doesn't know how many people are in the car. All Flock knows is your make and model of your car, the color of it, and the license plate attached to it.
Yep.
And that's all it records, as far as I know.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen anything different. And the reality of Flock is it's going to take a picture, like you said. It's going to put that vehicle in a specific area. We can't tell who's driving it. We don't know where they're going next. Half the time we get a Flock hit, we think it's in this area. In reality, it's actually gone the complete opposite way. So people, they make this argument, and it's due to ignorance, and it's not their fault, because they just simply don't know. But the reality of Flock is that all it does is give law enforcement a specific tag that's in a general area at a certain time. What comes next is completely up to the officers that may be in or around that area.
Yeah, Flock doesn't know who's in that car.
Nope, not at all.
No, and as far as I know, Flock also, you can only go back, if you're going to search a tag, you can only go back 30 days.
Yep.
You can't look anything up past 30 days prior. It's all deleted. We don't have access to it. I've never seen an agency that has access to more than 30 days of Flock data.
Me neither.
That data's gone. And I understand people being fearful of the technology, but also you're not fearful of your cell phone. You're not fearful of your smart car, which really, nobody sees them as smart cars, but every car has a computer in it now.
Right.
And I hate to break it to everyone, Apple Maps, Google Maps, they're also private companies that are taking your data and selling it to other people, which is what I've heard some folks accusing Flock of. And that would obviously be a concern, but Flock just knows your make and model of your car, the color of it, and the license plate attached to it, and what time it came past a certain point.
Right.
Google, Apple, they know exactly where you are all the time. They know what you're saying. They know what you're looking at. If you think that they're not collecting data every time you open up Face ID, I mean, you're living in a fantasy world.
Right.
If there's anything I'd be concerned about, it's my cell phone more than a Flock camera.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't focus on the benefits of Flock. It's kind of like what we see in the news, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but when organizations are only highlighting certain incidents that take place, and it's the very, very minority of those incidents, of course, it seems like there may be a lot more of a crisis and a lot more of overreach of law enforcement, specifically with flock, than what there really is. I can tell you in my experience, we have caught Lord knows how many stolen vehicles, murder perps, theft investigation. It's one of the most phenomenal tools we use for theft investigations. Domestic violence perps, whenever they get done doing Lord knows what harm to their significant other, and the only thing we may have from that victim is so-and-so did this to me. This is the car he drives. I have no clue what tag's on it, but I need an ambulance. This is where he's going. I can't tell you how many times we've been able to locate individuals who just got done beating their spouse to kingdom come simply because we, thank God, had a camera in the right place at the right time, and it was able to at least give us some minimal information, a license plate, a vehicle color, and where that vehicle hit at that given moment, where we can at least go attempt to make contact and make sure this isn't the guy that just did X, Y, and Z to their spouse or their girlfriend or their best friend. So the good that these cameras do, in my opinion and in my experience, it is so far exponentially outweighing the few bad apples who are being criminally charged for misuse of it, might I add. All of them, for the most part, are being criminally charged. So I understand their concerns, same as you, but I think that if we look at it from an unbiased perspective, they're doing a lot more good than what some people think is bad.
I think people think that it's tracking them all the time, and every time I've gone after a flock hit, it was there at that exact time. You still have to do a lot of legwork to try and find where they went after there.
Yeah, 100%.
There is not a flock camera at every intersection. They're spread out typically by a few miles. So it sometimes hits one camera and you're waiting to see, is it going to hit the next one? Or is it somewhere in between? Or did it turn around and go the other way?
Yep.
Because they only capture data going one direction. If the camera's facing east, it's only getting the cars going east. So you could go to the next intersection, pop a U-turn, and we never knew you popped a U-turn.
Yep.
So it's really, I think, people just don't understand how they truly work.
It's not as intrusive as they're led to believe by the media.
No, I don't think it is. As somebody who is concerned about what my phone listens to, I don't care what the flock camera captures.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Absolutely.
You knew where I was at that time, and you don't know where I went after that.
Yep.
That's just how it is.
Yeah, and I think that another part that a lot of people don't think about, and this is the reality of it, I think the misconception is that the public thinks that law enforcement is just on flock 24/7, typing in their license plate. Every tag that passes them, typing in the tag. That's not what happens at all.
Not at all.
Typically, flock is going to be used, in my experience, for investigating serious crimes. Like, hey, this vehicle, it's just involved in X, Y, and Z domestic, or this vehicle is believed to be stolen, or this vehicle was involved in a drive-by shooting that multiple witnesses called out. And so whenever we get maybe a bolo, or we have some evidence, whether it be video evidence from a store, that leads us to that specific tag, that's typically when flock is going to be used to input that tag, figure out its travel plans, figure out maybe where it came from, where it might be going to, so that we can intercept that vehicle and ultimately potentially hold those people accountable. Because again, 99% of the time that we're running a tag, it's because something has happened with that vehicle that is a crime in the state of Georgia where we're at, and we have to either A, intercept them, or B, go and conduct an investigation and determine the validity of whatever report was made.
Other than from officers searching tags because they're related for a crime, the only other use flock has is the alerts, which is flock telling you, hey, this car matches a wanted vehicle, or this car matches a stolen vehicle. And that's data that flock pulls from NCIC, and it says, hey, this car might be stolen, might be a wanted person. And then or even there might be a missing person or a missing kid, Amber Alert. It gives us all those alerts. And that's stuff that gets sent to our desktop, and it tells us, hey, this car was just here and there might be a wanted person in it. Or, hey, this car was just here and it looks like it's stolen. And even when that happens, we still have to go verify that data in NCIC ourselves before we can take action on it.
Yep.
So it's not like it knows everything about you and it's following you. There's a lot of legwork that you have to do on top of just using Flock, at least to do your job adequately.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more steps that go into it that ultimately result in us, again, looking into a tag to begin with. So that's something that, for the public listening, it's unfortunately, I think y'all are being misinformed. And, I get it. Don't take it from the cops, but we're the ones that use the systems every single day. We know how they work for the most part through and through. And again, just making the point, I mean, they are a phenomenal tool when used properly. And the individuals who choose to not use them properly, they're held accountable.
The only thing that could possibly come from getting rid of Flock cameras is an increase in crime.
Absolutely.
I've been in law enforcement for 7, almost 8 years. I've used Flock for all of those 7, almost 8 years. And all Flock has ever helped us do is reduce crime. And I guarantee you, we get rid of Flock cameras, every single jurisdiction that used them is going to see a very quick increase in crime and a very quick decrease in crime solvability.
Absolutely.
Their workload for investigators will increase. Your workload for everyone across law enforcement is going to increase because that is a crime reduction tool that got taken away. And there's politicians out there right now actively trying to criminalize Flock or ban it out altogether. So,
yeah, and that's just, it's mind blowing because the majority of them, all they see is probably one news article of a dirty cop, using it improperly, or, they don't see all these kidnapped children being located, murder perps being apprehended, stolen vehicles being returned to their owners. They don't see that.
I read an article where apparently some whistleblower from Flock said, oh, well, the cameras, only like 10% of the time they're used is it actually result in locating a missing person or unrest or some sort of something. And I was like, if you're taking those statistics off of the data that law enforcement inputs back into Flock, because Flock lets you put in outcomes now. When you get an alert, if it's an alert, not if it's a search tag, if it's an alert, like for a wanted person or stolen vehicle, you can mark an outcome and tell them, hey, we generated an arrest and here's the case number or whatever. Not many people do that. So if they're tracking statistics based off of that, it's not adequately tracked.
Nope.
Because not everybody is going in there and filling in outcomes.
Right.
There's a lot more positive outcomes to Flock cameras than people are led to believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Another point that really needs to be, I guess, hit on when it comes to Flock is that the legwork for finding tags and inputting tags doesn't just stop at the tags in the system. Cool, we're going to get an alert. Hopefully at some point we're going to have a general location of where this vehicle is. What ultimately comes after all that is you touched on it a little bit when it comes to like confirming hits, confirming information through, GCIC and the other systems. But there's so much more that comes into the fact and comes into play after that. Because in the event, say we are tracking like a stolen car or a murder perp.
Stolen cars, which are, as people like to, they're just property crimes. It's just a stolen car. Every time we've located a stolen car, there are guns in it at least. 9 out of 10 times there's a gun in it. If not, there's drugs in it. And I guarantee you those folks were about to murder, rape, or rob.
Yeah.
That is what they're planning on doing with those cars. So yes, the car in and of itself is a property crime, but they're not using that car to commit other property crimes. They're using a stolen car so they can get away with other stuff.
Yeah, it's to hide their identity so that when they choose to commit these other heinous crimes that the majority of them are planning to do, in my experience, it's just their way of being able to get away with it, to not be tied to a vehicle with their name on it. They're using a completely anonymous vehicle that they've obtained through illicit means anyways. Tying it back to them is near impossible, just simply because the recovery of it, like say we recover it if it's missing, 99% of the time, these individuals are smart. They're wearing gloves. We're not really getting DNA off of it. It's hard to process scenes like that, especially the interiors of vehicles. It can be exponentially hard to process.
When's the last time you actually saw latent prints getting processed? Because I think the GBI doesn't even process latent prints anymore unless it's for very significant cases.
Years. I mean, genuinely years. So
people see shows and they see cops with fingerprint dusting and stuff, and it's
just not the reality.
When I first got into law enforcement, we dusted everything. But then you get so many agencies are submitting stuff to the crime lab because not every agency has their own crime lab. It's all going to the state's crime lab. And so many people submit stuff and there becomes such a backlog that they can't keep up. And eventually they say, hey, unless it's a pretty serious crime, we're not touching it.
Yeah, and I was just talking to an individual last week about it, and right now I want to say the state is backlogged roughly 5,000 cases. So you look
People don't understand that either.
You look at them processing a case a day. That's what, 12, 13 years of cases.
Yep.
So, but I mean, to guess even take it a step further, I mean, with Flock, it's a phenomenal tool that's used to assist in determining somewhat locations. But after the fact, when these vehicles that we locate, say we light them up and say we pull them over and we begin to conduct a secondary investigation. I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, 99% of the time they are involved in some higher tier criminal activity that they're simply using that car as a facade and a cover up to not be able to track back to them. How many times can you think back where you've found a stolen vehicle or found some kind of serious crime on a Flock notification and you light that vehicle up, or you turn on your equipment and you try and conduct a traffic stop? 99% of the time, what happens next?
I'd say that when an officer locates a vehicle that's the subject of a criminal investigation through Flock, there's already a sense of it's pretty 50-50 if they're going to pull over or not, because they're identified already as having been involved with some sort of serious crime.
Right.
They're probably trying to get away with that crime. You're running into, hey, are they going to run or not?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's to me, that's when it comes to like the stolen vehicle notifications and, the other serious crimes, it's kind of like one of those 50-50s that goes through my head. Like, all right, I'm about to make contact with what through course of investigation has been determined to be more likely than not an individual involved in serious criminal activity. Those playbooks and those thoughts go through your head of more likely than not, this guy's probably about to run and he's about to endanger a lot of people. And I'm the only person that's going to be able to do anything. And the thoughts that go through my head is, thank God Flock was able to help us in finding this guy, but now what comes next? Right?
Now it's follow through from the officer and the agency in order to be able to get that individual in custody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to add a little point to that. I don't want it to be a misconception that we're just, every single time we're going out there, just stopping people based off a notification. 99% of the time, what are we going to do once we have it? We're going to try and find individual probable cause, a traffic violation, some other lawful reason to even initiate contact with that car to begin with.
It'll be the big controversial word, the pretextual stop.
Yeah, unbelievably important. One of the best tools law enforcement currently has provided to us right now is pretextual stop. And ultimately, Flock allows for a lot of pretextual stops. And a pretextual stop is, per definition, just for the audience, I mean, it's a traffic stop that's initiated based off a potential minor violation in order to investigate the potential for other serious, more intense crimes that come after that traffic stop or come during that traffic stop.
So how do you feel about agencies where they use all this technology? They have Flock and stuff, but then their officer gets behind that car, they light that car up, and the car says, I don't think I'm stopping today. It's like there's no follow through, because now we've created a dangerous situation and have no way of mitigating it.
So you're saying agencies that don't allow their officers to pursue the now fleeing occupants of that car? Correct.
They'll sit there and say, hey, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, just let them go. But, you sit there and you look at data. And honestly, let me go back. You don't look at data because I don't think there is data on it yet. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I could be wrong. But from my experience, the agencies that say, hey, just let them go, when you already started this dangerous situation, when you do that 180, go the other way and turn your lights off, that guy just doesn't go back to driving normal. They keep driving like they're nuts.
I think that it's two things that really stand out whenever an agency chooses to not allow their officers to pursue what is clearly an individual involved in criminal activity. It does two things really well. It emboldens the criminal that's currently conducting the act. It makes them feel like they're on top of the world. It emboldens them to do it again, because they know as long as I'm in this jurisdiction, I don't have to stop, and they're probably not going to chase me. I'm going to get away with whatever I want. That's the first piece. The second piece is, in your experience and in my experience, whenever we hear about chases being canceled by the agency, does that stop the fleeing individual from driving recklessly?
No, they go off and
Absolutely
kill
not.
someone anyways.
How many times have you been involved in a vehicle pursuit where, say, the car was too fast, right? We just simply couldn't keep up, and that happens, right? We can't catch them all. But I can tell you in my experience where I've been losing police chases, I've been getting smoked, as some people say, and I just couldn't keep up. And then a mile, 2, 3 miles ahead of me where I can't even see this guy, now he's involved in a serious collision.
Yep.
Now he has injured other motorists, and I'm not even pursuing him anymore.
Yep.
Because me turning my lights off and going the other way is not stopping the reckless act. It emboldens them. It makes them a lot more confident to get away. And it makes them, in my opinion, what I've seen, far more reckless, because when they realize, all right, I'm distancing myself from law enforcement, I'm creating that gap, I'm going to be a little bit more risky now, I'm going to do a couple more maneuvers that are even help me even more to get away. It just makes it more dangerous. But yeah, I mean, on the topic of, obviously chasing vehicles, there's an inherent risk involved. And that's not just only to, the innocent public and to the suspect that's running. I would say a lot of times there's even a bigger risk to law enforcement. But I guess I'll ask you this question. I mean, do you believe that pursuing individuals who choose to initiate vehicle pursuits and choose to run from law enforcement, I mean, do you think that is a necessary evil? Do you think that it is something that should be done?
That's a good way to put it too, because we're not starting a pursuit. They are. We're simply trying to make contact with somebody in order to investigate a crime.
Mm-hmm.
They're choosing to flee from the police, and they are initiating a pursuit.
Absolutely.
I think that law enforcement's ultimate goal is to reduce crime, maybe even prevent it, especially with technology nowadays. And I think a necessary evil to obtain that goal is pursuing fleeing vehicles. Because as you said, if we don't pursue those vehicles, the criminal will just get emboldened, and crime in that jurisdiction will just get worse because they know if I go there, I can get away with it if I just run.
Yep. I mean, look at these metro agencies around our capital. The majority of them have what? I mean, they have a excessively limited chase policy, and crime is through the roof. Violent crime is through the roof. Stolen vehicle crime and property crimes, theft crimes, you name it, is through the roof. Because
thankfully, some of that stuff has changed ever since COVID and the what was it called? The street racer epidemic that they had during COVID.
Yep.
The governor, Kemp, issued an order. He wanted a crime suppression detail in Metro Atlanta because it was just getting so out of control. I think ever since they started that crime suppression detail, crime has, in terms of fleeing, gone down at least every year. People still run, but not as much as they used to. Not nearly as much. And especially with that new legislation we got, now if you run, it's a minimum 1 year in prison.
Yep.
You're going to go to jail if you're convicted. It's that simple. So the state really is working very hard and diligently to prevent those dangerous pursuits from happening. But they can only do so much. We also have to be willing to do our part on the road. And it's not just turning around and turning your lights off. Some chases are too dangerous.
Yeah.
But I think if you want to really bring crime down, you have to do it. There's no way out of it.
I think that it's on the agencies as well, because agencies have a lot of leeway in determining what their own individual policies are in regards to use of force and vehicle pursuits. And the state lays out a pretty solid guideline about when each is justified. But I don't think a lot of people realize, like, the state of Georgia in itself, we developed the case law, Scott v. Harris, and it gives us as officers, specifically in the 11th Circuit, but really the entire United States, a lot more leeway to engage in vehicle pursuits and to take those vehicles off the roadway when deemed necessary for the safety and innocent motoring public. But again, it comes down to, is that agency willing to take on a little bit of liability that may come with it? Because that's inherent in everything we do as law enforcement.
I'd say the question is, I'd say the true question is, are you worried more about getting sued, or are you more worried about bringing your crime down?
Absolutely.
You can't have both.
You can't. I mean, it's impossible to have both with police work comes liability, regardless of what you're doing in it. But yeah, I think that with the state, like what you said, Governor Kemp, doing the whole, the I think it was the street racing task force, what you said, and making those units to begin to actually aggressively attempt to stop those dangerous, street takeovers. And I think that was a phenomenal step towards showing the rest of metro area, and really, I think the whole state, like, okay, this is tolerated. We will let your guys do their job so long as they do it safely. And so far, I would say that the difference that's been made is so far beyond the positive spectrum as compared to the negative spectrum. Because what we said earlier, if we don't pursue, we don't hold them accountable, all we are doing is we are enhancing the problem.
Let me correct that too, though. It's not about chasing. I hate to see a California police chase where the helicopter's following and they've been chasing this guy for over an hour. And there's just 50 police cars behind this dude just following him through the whole state of California. And you're like, what are you doing, dude?
It's the Daytona 500. We're going to go forever.
The pursuit has to be ended as quickly as possible in order to preserve public safety.
That's the number one goal.
And if your agency doesn't have steps in place in order to terminate the pursuit as quickly as possible, then there's no sense in chasing to begin with.
Well, in your opinion, I mean, what would be the quickest and safest way to end a vehicle pursuit? I mean, I guess where does your mind go with it?
I think the most effective and safest way to end a pursuit, believe it or not, is a pit. I think it's safest for the violator, the general public, and the officers all at the same time. You got to think about stop sticks. You have to get a police officer in the road to lay them down. And then they better have a good spot to hide. And behind a car is not a good spot.
Yeah.
A roadblock, we don't use that anymore.
No, too dangerous.
And you really don't have many options besides that. I mean, there's technology like Grappler. There's the little thing the car shoots out and it tracks them. But you're cool. You shoot the dart at the car and it tracks it. One, they're still going to keep running. And two, then you're going to recover a car and you're not going to know who committed the crime at the end of the day.
What if it's a stolen car and that person goes out next week and just steals another one?
That's exactly what they're going to do.
Right. So I guess your point's right. The quickest way to end a dangerous vehicle pursuit for the safety of the innocent public, really the safety of the violator at the end of the day so that pursuit doesn't go on, is to pit the vehicle, quickly.
I'd say a properly performed pit is safer than all the other options.
Right. And, I've been in chases where we've attempted box ends. I don't know how you feel about box ends. I don't think I've ever felt more exposed and in harm's way than attempting to get in front of and stop a vehicle at high rates of speed.
Yeah, I don't think it's really feasible. And you're asking somebody to just start shooting at you and you're right next to them.
There's nothing you can do.
Not a thing.
Right.
So in your experience, seeing a pit versus another type of pursuit termination technique, I mean, what are those outcomes like?
Well, I can kind of give you a couple examples that I've personally experienced over the years, and let's harp on the spike strip debate, right? And spike strips can be phenomenal tools, right? I've used them on fleeing vehicles before, but the issue with spike strips is that they typically do not disable a car. They may slow that rate of speed, but in a lot of cases, what ends up happening is after you've spike stripped a car, the car becomes a lot more dangerous because it's harder to control. Granted, the speeds are lower, but normally the individual is not stopping. They're just losing the ability to control their vehicle. And we're hoping that once the tires deflate, they realize, okay, the chance of getting away at a high rate of speed is not going to happen anymore.
You can drive with no tires. I think that's a common misconception.
Absolutely. So then you have, the alternative of like doing a box in. And a box in is unbelievably dangerous. I know some agencies that don't even allow their officers to pull up next to fleeing vehicles because I know in the last 3 months, I've seen 2 shooting videos where they will attempt a box in, pull up next to it, start to close in, and the guy just leans out and starts shooting at the cops, and the cops really can't do anything about it.
Nope, you're stuck.
Exactly. And then you've got what, in my opinion and my experience, is the absolute most proficient and safest way to end a vehicle pursuit, and that is to perform a pit maneuver properly in the right area at the right time and at the right speeds. And the right speeds can be dictated by obviously what kind of roadways you're on, how wide the roadways are, if it's a county road, city street, interstate, you name it, all those go into play. But ultimately, if you want to stop a fleeing vehicle, ensure the safety of the innocent motoring public, and not let this go on like all those places do out west just for an hour straight, you put the car into a ditch. It can't flee anymore. And if it does, you put it in a ditch again. You pit quickly and you pit often. You put them in the ditch and you don't let them get up to speed.
I've pit a car as many as at least 4 or 5 times once before.
Yes, absolutely. My last one I pit 3 times.
You spin them out, they decide to take off again. Well, now we're not going that fast. We'll spin you again.
Yep, absolutely.
Up until you get dizzy and decide to stop.
Yeah. I had 3 pits within probably 2.5 minutes, all above 130 miles an hour last time. They were performed properly and nobody got injured, surprisingly, even the suspect.
In reality, the pit maneuver is a precision maneuver where you're sending the offender vehicle in a controlled spin that will hopefully disable the offender vehicle.
Right.
And sometimes it just takes that spin to shut their engine off and kill that car.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate goal, is to cease the fleeing act.
Oftentimes, that vehicle doesn't even have to strike something.
No.
Sometimes you spin them out and they end up stopped in the middle of the road, and that's the end of it.
Sometimes it's the action of just maneuvering to the ability to perform a pit where that fleeing suspect sees what's potentially going to happen to them, sees that they're probably about to get spun out. And I've had them completely stop when they just see that, okay, I'm about to get pit. He's about to make contact with my vehicle. This only goes one of 2 ways. And a lot of times, even just we'll call it a show of force, even as you're just setting up to perform a pit, that's enough to get somebody to pull over and cease their action.
Absolutely.
So to me, when you weigh the potential risk of a pit maneuver versus all the innocent lives that you're saving by not performing it, there's no contest. And I'll kind of dive into that more. I've seen chases where, of course, we've seen them all over the news, but I have personally seen in vehicle pursuits where that vehicle is allowed to just flee and keep fleeing, and nobody is taking charge to end that chase. And then 5, 10, 15 miles down the road, what ends up happening? They end up hitting some innocent motorist, or they end up having this horrific crash at a very undesirable location, when in reality, it could have been ended 5 miles back at 70 miles an hour. You could have completely ceased that. Everybody's happy. Nobody's injured. Typically, nobody's injured. And everybody gets to go home.
Absolutely. Now, that falls also in a play of the leadership of the agency you work for, because like we said earlier, it's about liability versus decreasing crime. Which one are you most interested in? And I hate to put it that way, but like I said, you can't have the best of both worlds. And sometimes it is all about the leadership you work for. Yeah,
I mean, that's a whole other topic in itself, especially in the year that we're in. Ultimately, and this is obviously encouragement for anybody who's in law enforcement or maybe looking at getting into law enforcement, you need to really put a lot of thought into the place that you choose to work for, because ultimately leadership at that place is what's going to be what makes or breaks you. It's not going to be the suspects you deal with typically. It's not going to be the hard calls you go to that break you. Normally, it's going to be your leadership. It's going to be the decisions they make at the top, sometimes based off opinion, sometimes based off fact. That's ultimately going to determine where your career goes and how it gets there. So you've really got to put a lot of thought into, do I trust the individuals at the top to allow me to be proactive, allow me to use discretion, and don't act based off opinion, and give their guys the benefit of the doubt whenever it's warranted.
And I think the leadership does play a big role in it, because you and I have been involved in incidents that did not turn out the best for us, not even for somebody else. But
Right.
Depending on who your leaders are, it'll make or break you. It really will. The public can do and say whatever they want to you. You can go to as many bad calls as you want. But at the end of the day, what really matters is how your family, which is the agency you work for, treats you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That will matter more to the officer than all the other bad stuff they've seen.
Yeah.
Because if they can't feel like they can go home and be safe at home, which is that agency, that's going to break them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've had the privilege to work for some of the most phenomenal leaders you could imagine. People that genuinely lead like from the front. They don't sit there and talk and do as I say, not as I do. Genuinely lead from the front, be the tip of the spear, set a true example, not based off what they're saying, based off what they've done and what they're continuing to do. I believe that that's probably one of the most important leadership traits in law enforcement, is that you are promoted based off of merit, and that based off of good things you've done, a true understanding of the job, and not just how long you've been there, what your name is, who you know. And unfortunately, that can be, some people may have dealt with that side of leadership, and it's a hard pill to swallow when you don't respect your leaders necessarily. But
that takes me to something else too, because you hear all the time, well, I've got this much experience, I've got X amount of experience, I've been doing this 15 years.
That's my favorite conversation.
But you look back, and at least I sit back and say, cool, you've been doing this 15 years. What have you done in those 15 years?
Yep.
Because you can work at McDonald's for 15 years and not know how to flip a burger.
Yeah. I mean, it's the age-old saying that I think law enforcement is probably one of the number one professions that it relates to. Experience is not how long you've been on the road. Experience is what you've done in the time you've been there.
Absolutely.
Point blank, period. There's no argument. I don't look at somebody and automatically respect who they are because of their rank. I respect their rank. That's super important. That's a military trait. You respect the rank regardless of the person who wears it, because that's the right thing to do. They are there for a reason, but ultimately it's up to that person who's in the leadership role to humbly look back and say, okay, what have I done to get here? Is that enough? Is there more for me to learn within this leadership role? And how am I going to deal with the subordinates who may look at me in some certain light, or may know about my past, and maybe it's not the best past, but still here I am. That's a super hard avenue to navigate. If you yourself as a leader can look back and say, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to view me. I don't know how these young guys may look at me because of things I've done or things I haven't done. Right? That's a hard thing. Time does not equal experience. Experience equals experience.
It's what you did. It's
Absolutely.
not how long you did it.
And you said that, with the proper command staff, like me and you have had it, the majority of places that we've worked at, it's good to know that they have your back in the event that an incident goes exactly as you want it to, or maybe not precisely how you intended. And I think that me and you've got one.
Sometimes when you're a police officer, like, you don't, sure, you control the situation, but you don't control the situation. Everybody's got free will. And the offender doesn't always do what they're supposed to do. There was one specific time where we thought we had it in the bag. It was secure in the bag.
We were zipping it up.
Oh yeah, it was ready to go. And all of a sudden, this guy just takes off running.
Yeah. I'll set the scene here. I believe you were conducting some early morning traffic enforcement in a pretty high crime area, and you encountered an individual which obviously, based off the totality of the circumstances, he was involved in some form of criminal activity. I don't remember the details. For some reason, I just happened to be called as your backup that day. I'm just so excited to be there with you.
At 6 a.m.
At 6 a.m. Haven't even eaten breakfast yet. And I show up, and I'll be honest with you. I mean, this gentleman we were dealing with, he was put together for the most part. His composure, we talk about in law enforcement, these pre-flight indicators and the things you see, whether it be looking over the shoulder, adjusting your feet, adjusting anchor positions, like the things that that tell you as an officer, this guy's probably about to run. Well, as we were zipping this thing up and getting ready to, effect an arrest, something just told this gentleman to go ahead and beat feet.
I'm pretty sure we were just talking to him too. We were just having a conversation.
I was literally from me to you just talking. I think my arms were crossed. I'm relaxed with this guy, like, still on guard, right? And next thing you know, he runs out of his shoes. I mean, kicks the flip-flops, probably 400 feet in the air, how fast he ran. And the
Looked
chase,
like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon.
the chase was on at that point, and
I think I ran all of 20 yards, and I
No.
said, "Yeah, I'm getting back in my car."
Don't you give yourself that much credit.
I ran about 20 yards, ran back to
So-
my car.
So there I am, and I'm pursuing this individual, and I don't hear my partner's footsteps behind me. I'm thinking, wow, where is my partner at right now? And I hear his car door slam. I said, oh, I guess he's going back in service. Well, I'm going to keep chasing this guy. And so this chase continues, and we're running. It's 6 a.m. There's work traffic everywhere. I mean, there's foot traffic coming in and out of this gas station that we're running by. And one of the first things that I remember, I've been running this same radio pouch for about 2 years. And, this was just the perfect morning for that radio pouch to just break. And so I remember I'm going for my taser on my off hand, and my radio pops out and starts dragging on the ground. And I'm full sprint at this point. I'm closing distance, and it starts to get wrapped up and stuff. And so I'm having to slow down and pick this thing up. And meanwhile, you're in your car drinking coffee or whatever you were doing. You weren't helping
Riding
me.
right beside you.
You weren't helping me.
Riding right beside you.
So I'm having to switch tasers, slow down my run, grab this radio and try and resecure it. It's flopping everywhere. And I see the point that we're coming up to it's a car wash at a gas station, but it's like one of those self-service ones, right? And I know on the other side of that is just it's a retaining wall.
It's a 6-foot wall, and right over that wall is just an embankment.
6-foot wall, embankment with a massive drop off below. I mean, the drop's, I don't know, 20, 30 feet, right? It's a straight drop, and I'm running
I don't
after.
think you knew it was there beforehand.
Let's just say I did. Anyways, we come up to this, and the wall itself, look, I'm 5'9". I can't even see over this wall, and I see this athletic man, head first over this big retaining wall, and I don't know where he's landing because I may or may not have known about the 30-foot drop on the other side. But what I did is I'm still, my partner's still nowhere to be found for some reason.
I'm in the car right next to you watching it.
Oh, okay. And so I get up
I'm
on
letting
this.
radio know exactly where you are. Since
Well,
your
my radio was flopping everywhere. And I remember I get up on this big old retaining wall, and I see him, like, as he's landing, because it's such a far drop, I see him landing and just hitting the ground. And of course, I'm thinking, oh, it's over. Like, yeah, he's injured. Like, I'm about to call for EMS for this guy. Like, he hit hard. And this guy springs right back up. And so I, being the young, full of vinegar guy I am, I make a decision very quickly. It's either A, I have to explain to my captain why I didn't catch this guy, and he's going to make fun of me saying, really, you let a little drop off stop you. Or B, I go home being a little bit more sore, but I caught the guy. So I do what every good cop would have done, and I go straight off the retaining wall after him. In the process, there was this piece of metal sticking out, sliced my arm like from, good Lord. I mean, it was like a 6-inch cut down my arm. I land, I jar my back, I smacked my head on the ground. I got a concussion. I'm dazed, but I look up and I see him going up this embankment now, the other side. And I'm like, well, my partner's still nowhere to be seen, so I guess I got to keep going after this guy.
At this point, I saw the guy where he ran, and I got out of my car and started running after. We met as you came out of the woods.
Yeah. Well, a lot happened in between that time of me coming out. I had got up. I'm trying to get all my equipment put together because I'd hit so hard on the ground that my radio flew out again. I didn't realize it. And I get up to run after this dude, and he's maybe 15 feet in front of me at this point. So I'm still on him. And as I start to raise my arm to get ready to try and pop him with a taser, my radio had got wrapped around a bush. And so I start getting choked by my radio. I can't continue running. I have to stop. I have to undo it, put all my stuff back together. And then I come up that hill, and me and you meet each other. And, you had been running just for so long at this point.
In the AC.
In the AC. And then we meet each other. Me and you were basically running side by side.
Yep.
And we see this guy, and it goes for probably another 400 yards. I mean, we're booking it.
We got to an open field behind like a U-Haul center, and I yelled some threats at him and asked him to please comply.
To get on the ground, right?
And he, after listening to the things I had to say to him, he decided that the best possible course of action was probably for him to comply.
To sprawl out, yeah.
Yes.
And my favorite part, I think, was when I moved in to cuff the guy, and I'm seeing two of him, and I can't really see straight. I go to reach for handcuffs, and I realize all my handcuffs have now fallen out. When I hit the ground, I have no handcuffs left. Every single one I had on me, I was 2 at the time. One of the pouches broke, handcuffs went flying, my magazines went flying. I mean, I look up at you and I think I was like, just throw me a set of handcuffs, dude.
The importance of having adequate equipment in law enforcement.
I mean, I'd ran that same equipment for 2 years and I never had a problem. Anyways, I remember we get him into custody, right? And this is coming back to having a phenomenal leader, right? Having a good leader. I remember we take him into custody. We take him back up to the incident location, and our lieutenant at the time basically rolled up, and we're covered in blood. We're covered in mud.
First of all, hold on. Let's go back for a second. It was 6 a.m. Everybody else on shift was sitting having breakfast.
Yep.
And us 2 dummies were out stopping cars at one of the furthest extents of the county. Like, we were nowhere close to where everybody else was at.
Yep.
So, in the midst of our entire foot pursuit, only like when we were walking out of the woods did the next unit actually get there to help us.
And this is, it's going on for what, 5 minutes, 8 minutes?
We ruined everyone's breakfast.
Everybody. But I remember we got back to the incident location, and our lieutenant at the time, I think he had like pulled up in his car, and like he looks at us like we're covered in mud. I've got blood pouring down my arm at this point because I'm so cut up. And I don't remember what he said. In his words, it was probably something along the lines of like, "Yeah, bet you're not going to work at 6 a.m. again, are you?" Probably something like that. But obviously, individual gets taken into custody, and that incident subsides, and
that was all over a crack cookie too.
Yeah, all over what, a 2-gram crack cookie, like not a big deal, a little bit of crack. But yeah, I remember the rest of that day. We're muddy uniforms, sitting there patrolling the county.
Muddy boots, muddy uniforms.
Muddy boots. Didn't think twice about it, but yeah, that was probably a test of his leadership and his patience, I think, at that point. But
that same spot where we started that foot chase, we started a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that same gas station. I mean, goodness, we could go into that.
And we chased cars out of that gas station. Yep. We chased people out of that gas station.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
honestly,
a good one. And I think it's slept on nowadays, but
it is. I don't know if it's worked as much, but it's still a high crime area over there. I'm sure some people still mess with it, but yeah, that was I think that was we definitely tested our lieutenant's leadership and patience. Me and you specifically, a lot.
Worth it.
Absolutely. Wouldn't change it for the world.
Well worth it.